Welcome to the Lucas Rockwood Show. I'm a yoga teacher, a trainer, a nutritional coach. I'm a father, I'm an entrepreneur, but first and foremost, I am a student and I love learning, and this show is really about scratching my own itch to learn. I bring on experts, authors, medical doctors, movement specialists, meditation teachers, really anyone I can find who's doing cutting-edge work in health and wellness to help you live a better life with their best information, their best research, and their latest thinking. On this week's show, we'll be talking about health and wellness, but from a holistic lifestyle perspective. When we talk about health and wellness, at least for me, I often just default to food and exercise, which of course are so powerful, but we often forget two things. One is stress management, which is absolutely crucial, and number two is love and connection, community support, family. And I guess the reason that I jump to food and fitness is because right now I can walk out to the store and I can buy a healthy meal, and right now I can go down the street to a yoga studio or a gym and I can get a fix, and I can really make choices that impact me positively right away. Now, fixing family relationships, reconnecting with siblings I've lost touch with, repairing damaged friendships from years ago, that's a little bit harder. That's not an instant fix. I can't do that alone. It requires social interaction. Finding purpose in life, that's a really challenging one. And so, managing your stress, again, how do you do that? Some of us live in very real stressful situations that are out of our control. Many of you listening are in a government situation that causes you stress every day. Some of you are in hostile work or home environments that you can't just walk down the street and pay to escape from. So when we think about health and wellness, we really need to broaden the picture. And if you look at comprehensive, really successful health regimes, whether it's things like our guest today, Dr. Dean Ornish, has implemented, whether it's things like that happened at Saddleback Church or with Seventh-day Adventists or with all kinds of different isolated and even big groups of people around the world, the recurring factor is not whether they're vegan or paleo or whether they're doing yoga or CrossFit. The recurring factor in success is community social support. And this is something that I've really had, as kind of a loner myself, I've really had to beat my own head again and again to remind myself that without community, without support, without a support network, you just won't be successful or nearly as successful with your health goals. So were you to pick one deciding factor in terms of what to eat, where to exercise, the one you can do with a friend, a family member, a loved one, that's going to be the one that's going to give you the biggest results. This is a really high leverage thing to internalize. I think you're going to get a lot of value from this show. I appreciate you listening. As always, your questions, comments, and feedback are most welcome. You can email me podcast@yogabody.com. So hello and welcome everyone, Lucas Rockwood here. I am joined by Dr. Dean Ornish. Today's show is called Undo It. Dean Ornish is the founder and president of the nonprofit Preventative Medicine Research Institute and clinical professor of medicine at both UCSF and UCSD. He was recognized as one of the 125 most extraordinary University of Texas alumni in the past 125 years, also by Time Magazine as a Time 100 Innovator, by Life Magazine as one of the 50 most influential members of his generation, by People Magazine as one of the most interesting people of the year, by Forbes Magazine as one of the world's 7 most powerful teachers. He's the author of a whole bunch of books which you should check out. They've been a huge influence on me over the years. Today we'll be chatting about his newest book, which is co-authored by his wife, Anne. Unfortunately, she can't join us today, and the book is called Undo It. The website is called undoitbook.com, and Dean's main site is ornish.com. Dean, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be there.
So you're best known for your work around reversing heart disease, plant-based diet, nutrition, and ever since I got into this whole scene, your name was always front and center. And just want to thank you for all the work that you've done. Over the years, you continue to publish, continue to research. And I have kind of an interesting question, but I'm curious, over the years, I'm curious if there's anything that you've had a big reversal on since you first started. All of the research that I do is very much pop health and, working with yoga students and clients, and you're very much in the trenches, working, in clinical setting, in a research setting, and I'd be just so interested to hear if there's something, for example, if you were recommending 6 grams of salt a day and now it's 2 grams of salt, or if you used to be worried about cholesterol and now you're worried about triglycerides, if there's any been reversals are often an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, no, I think people should eat cheeseburgers every day. No, just kidding. No, the only reversal has been that we're we were finding more diseases that can be reversed
Yeah.
by making these changes. We started, as you indicated, we were the first to prove that heart disease could actually be reversed by making changes in diet and lifestyle. And over the last 4 decades, we've shown that the more diseases we study and the more underlying mechanisms we look at, the more reasons we have to explain why these simple changes are so powerful and how quickly people can get better. So we found that these same lifestyle changes could reverse heart disease, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity, early stage prostate cancer. We found that when you change your lifestyle, it changes your genes and turns on the genes that keep you healthy and turns off the genes that cause all these different chronic diseases. We did a study with Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn, who got the Nobel Prize for discovering telomeres, the ends of our chromosomes that regulate how long we live, and we found that we could, for the first time, reverse aging at a cellular level by lengthening telomeres. And we're now in the middle of the first randomized trial to see if we can reverse early-stage Alzheimer's disease. And so what I present in the new book, which really makes it unique in synthesizing all this work, is that although a lot of people are interested in personalized diets and personalized lifestyle interventions, what we actually found was that these same lifestyle changes could reverse all of these different conditions. And so the reason for that, and the radical unifying theory that we're putting forth in this new book, is that I was trained, like all doctors, to view all these different diseases as being just that, different diseases, different diagnoses, different treatments, but they're really the same disease manifesting and masquerading in different forms. And so the unifying theory is that the reason that these same lifestyle changes can reverse so many and therefore prevent so many different chronic diseases, that they're really the same disease, and that they all share the same underlying biological mechanisms like chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, changes in gene expression, telomeres, and the microbiome, and so on. And each one of these mechanisms is directly influenced by what we eat, how we respond to stress, how much exercise we get, and how much love and support. So we radically simplified everything in this book. And the reason is that, my favorite, we called it undo it because my favorite key on the computer's always been the undo button. I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we had one in our lives, and now we do. And it begins with a quote from Albert Einstein that says, if you can't make it simple, you don't understand it well enough. And so we made it radically simple here.
And when people, you're using the term lifestyle, and I know your book is really taking a holistic approach, and I think it's so important to look at because, I meet people all the time who are convinced that acai berry or raspberry ketones or, bone broth or green juice or whatever it is really the key, and really everything is the key, So if you're eating the perfect diet, but your emotional life is a mess, it's not going to work. If you're stressed out all day and you're exercising great, it's probably going to be imbalanced. So people are always, I personally gravitate towards food first because it's fun and it's tasty and it's easy and we do it 3 times a day. But can you just speak a little bit to the lifestyle element? Because I think oftentimes with your work, people often overlook in a clinical setting as well, the lifestyle elements, meaning stress management, love, care, emotional support, that are really an important part of the healing journey as well.
I appreciate your question because when people think of my work, they often do think about diet.
Right.
And diet clearly is important, but we reduce it to eat well, move more, stress less, love more. Boom, that's it. Mm. And the Eat Well is a whole foods plant-based diet that's naturally low in fat and sugar, mostly fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and so on. The stress management is various yoga-based meditation, stretching, breathing techniques, mindfulness, and so on. Move More is exercise, both aerobic and strength training as well as stretching. And the Love More is just that, not just romantic love, although it includes that, or sexual love, but also the love of parents and kids and family and community and having a pet. And they all interact with each other. And the paradox is that when you make a lot of these changes at the same time, because these underlying biological mechanisms are so dynamic, most people find that they feel so much better so quickly, it reframes the reason for making these changes from fear of dying to joy of living. Your brain gets more blood, so you think more clearly, you have more energy, you need less sleep. You can grow so many new brain neurons in just a few weeks that, believe it or not, your brain can actually get bigger, and particularly those parts of your brain that you want to get bigger, like your hippocampus that controls memory. Your skin gets more blood, so you look 10 or 20 years younger than you do. Your heart gets more blood. You have more vigor. You can reverse heart disease. Even your sexual organs get more blood flow. There's a wonderful new film that James Cameron did with Luis Hoyos that will be coming out in a few months called Game Changers. And they became vegan. Jim Cameron became vegan about 9 or 10 years ago because in addition to making all these wonderful movies like, Terminator and Avatar and Titanic and so on, he's an explorer, and he learned that more global warming is due to livestock consumption than all forms of transportation combined. And so he went on a plant-based diet, initially for the environment, and then he had so much energy, he's actually making Avatars 2, 3, and 4 at the same time now. I went to the movie set, and he's actually sleeping on the set most of the time. He's just got so much energy. And he made a new film called Game Changers, which is about how elite athletes, because the biggest myth about eating a plant-based diet is you're a wimp and you don't get enough protein. And so he's got all these elite athletes in there who became Olympic medalists and NFL superstars and mixed martial artists, national champions, and people like Rich Roll, who's probably the fittest guy alive, bodybuilders and so on, who raise their game by eating this way. And there's this one great scene with these 3 athletes in their mid-20s that I mentioned in the first chapter of the book where he fed them a single meat-based meal, and then they had a urologist who measured the frequency and hardness of the erections that they had at night, because it's a normal function when guys sleep that they have erections. And then they fed them a single meat-based meal the next night. A single plant-based meal the next night. First a meat-based meal, then the next night a plant-based meal. And they found out for the plant-based meal they had 300% to 500% more frequent erections and 10 to 15% harder than they did after the meat-based meal. Apparently the film crew went on a plant-based diet after shooting that. And it just shows how dynamic these mechanisms are, that you get more blood flow all of your body. So you have hotter sex and a cooler planet when you eat this way. And for many people, it's meaningful to know that something as primal as what we put in our mouths each day, like what we eat, not only affects us, but affects, global warming. And likewise, it takes 10 to 14 times more resources to make a pound of meat-based protein than plant-based protein. So you can feed the hunger when you move more in this direction as well. And so one of the things I love about this book is that it really shows how we can imbue those choices with meaning, not just, doing it to live longer, but to live better and to feel better. And what's good for you is good for the planet, and what's personally sustainable is globally sustainable.
One of the challenges I find with myself and with speaking to listeners and clients who come into our studios and things is people have different goals. And so if somebody has heart disease, absolutely, your work and your research is just such a great choice. But I guess, people come into the studio and they want to gain 30 pounds or they want to do an ultra marathon. Yeah, maybe they want to put on weight. They want to put on muscle mass, or a really lean guy, wants to bulk up, or somebody wants to go run an ultra marathon, and somebody else might be dealing with recovering from a breast cancer operation or something like that. And where I'm going with this is I think that the goals. Let me rephrase this question: Do the goals matter? Like, for example, my whole thing is I'd like to die living at 122. I'm trying to live a long time and live a full life. I don't have any athletic aspirations. I don't need to have a six pack. I don't need any of it. I just want to live a really full life and have a lot of energy for my kids, my grandkids, and all this kind of thing. But I meet people who would be happy to die at 80 if they can, complete 10 Ironmans or whatever it is. And where people jump with this right away is they look at someone like Rich Roll, who's putting in really some pretty serious miles, both on the bike and on his feet every week, or they look at someone who's an MMA fighter, or they model their diet after a bodybuilder, and they think, if that diet is good enough for them to get this level of performance, for me in my office job, it's going to be great as well. But everything from the macro to the micro to the frequency of meals, there is an individuality. Somebody like a Rich Roll might be eating 2 or 3 times as many just straight up caloric intake as someone like me. So the question is, how do you help people look at their life unique? Because we do have unique lives. Some people are doing 10K a day, and some people are doing 10K a year. And some people have stress levels through the roof, and they really need to mitigate that. And other people have a pretty chill life. How do you think about this in terms of optimizing for what your goals are?
It's a good question, and what's interesting is that it's really the same intervention for all of these different types of people. It just might be that someone like a Rich Roll who's doing an ultramarathon will need more food because they're burning up more calories. But the type of food and the type of exercise, as opposed to the amount, is really not going to be that different, whether you're just trying to live longer or to increase your performance, whether it's in school or athletics or work. It's really the same lifestyle intervention for all of them. And it helps explain why, entire countries like in Asia 50 years ago, in Japan or China, they had their risk of and their prevalence of these chronic diseases that we've been talking about, like heart disease and diabetes and prostate, breast, and colon cancer, was a fraction of what it is in this country. But when they start to eat like us and live like us, they all too often die like us. And they have the same kind of genetic variability that we have in this country. But even if you have someone, whether it's in this country or somewhere else, that's, for example, let's say you have two people. One's able to metabolize dietary fat or dietary sugar more efficiently than someone else. Okay, well, but if you're not eating that much to begin with, if the recommendations are don't eat too much fat, don't eat too much sugar, don't eat too much animal protein, then those individual differences really don't matter that much. That's why an entire country like Japan or China 50 years ago had such low rates of these diseases, even though they have that individual variability, because even if you're not very efficient in metabolizing these things, if you're not eating them, then it doesn't matter. And that just makes it radically simple for people. And one of the other things that we found that I think is really important is that when I began doing these studies, I thought incorrectly, you were asking earlier about, what have I changed? I thought that the younger people with less severe disease would do better, but it turns out I was wrong. It wasn't how old people were. It wasn't how sick they were. It was simply a function of the more they changed their lifestyle, the closer they followed our program, the better they got. And they not only felt better, but they were better in every way we could measure. So what matters most is your overall way of eating and living. If you're trying to reverse a life-threatening condition, that's the pound of cure, and that's why we were the first to prove that we could reverse all of these different conditions, because most people didn't go far enough to actually reverse it. But if you're just trying to, like yourself, lose a few pounds or bulk up or, get your cholesterol or blood pressure or blood sugar or whatever down, the more you change, the more you improve at any age. And that's a very empowering and very hopeful message for people to know.
So I live in Barcelona most of the year on the Mediterranean, and when I'm not there, people often talk about the wonderful Mediterranean diet. And I live there, and it's just not that wonderful. It's a lot of processed food. There's a lot of bread, a lot of white bread. There's, of course, the oil is really high quality, and that is something that is definitely noticeable and remarkable, and it's inexpensive. But it really gets glorified outside of the Mediterranean. In the Mediterranean, I see people eating mostly bags of crisps and similar things that people eat in other places. But we just hit number 2 in terms of life expectancy in the world. And so people are doing really well. And I think it's in spite of what I would consider an average diet with a couple of exceptional ingredients that are really predominant, like the oils, for example. But and I think the lifestyle is really remarkable in that there's a palpable sense of calm, meaning stress levels are palpably lower in Barcelona than New York City or Chicago or Bangkok or these other big cities. And where I'm going with this question is, if you had to pick something that was highest leverage for a random client, everybody, like I mentioned before, my tendency is just to jump to diet. I just want to start measuring things and doing macros. But I sometimes wonder, I'm looking at the place I'm living, and I'm, look out the window of my office, and there's people drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, and, having pan con tomate for breakfast, and they're living 83 years old. Well, it's pretty good. And so I'm kind of wondering, like, maybe I started with the wrong thing. Maybe for me, as a type A, maybe I should have focused on stress management. I'm just curious because I know your programs, of course, are holistic. Do you put more emphasis on one lever or the other, or is it everything?
I think it's all important, and for the very reasons you've talked about. I mean, a Mediterranean diet is a better diet than what most people are eating, but it actually doesn't go far enough to reverse disease the way that the diet in our book does. It takes it even further. But again, it's not just diet. One of the reasons why people in Mediterranean countries live longer isn't just because of the diet, it's because of the social factors, that people, that's changing too, unfortunately, but at least say 30 or 40 years ago, people had an extended family they saw regularly. Just like in this country, they had a neighborhood with 2 or 3 generations of people that grew up together. They had a church or synagogue or a club that they went to regularly. They had a job that felt secure that they'd been at for many years and got to know their coworkers. And I'm struck by all the studies that come out that I talk about in the new book, that study after study has shown that people who are lonely and depressed and isolated, which I think is a real epidemic in many countries, certainly in the U.S., are 3 to 10 times more likely to get sick and die prematurely than those who have a strong sense of love and connection and community. And I don't know anything in medicine that has that big an impact, including diet or smoking even, in part because of direct measures, in part because people often, are more likely to abuse themselves when they're feeling lonely and depressed. I'd ask the patients in our study, like, why do you do these things? They're so maladaptive. And they said, you don't get it. They're very adaptive. They help us deal with our pain, our loneliness. They'll say things like, I've got 20 friends in this pack of cigarettes, and they're always there for me, and nobody else is. You're going to take away my 20 friends? What are you going to give me? Or food fills that void, or alcohol numbs the pain, or, video games numb the pain, or working all the time numbs the pain, or, what we've learned is that information is important, but it's not like people who smoke don't know it's bad for them. At least in the U.S., it's on every pack of cigarettes. We have to work at not just giving information or work at changing behaviors, but work on these deeper issues that when we do, and, whether it's helping people realize that the time that we spend with our friends and family and loved ones isn't just a luxury to do after you've done the important stuff, that it is the important stuff. It gives people permission to do that. And then we find that they're much more likely to make and maintain lifestyle choices that are life-enhancing than ones that are self-destructive.
People always ask me what's the best exercise to do and what's the best yoga class and fitness routine. I always say that the best one is the one that somebody else will go to you with, because, if you look at the research, whether it's Seventh-day Adventist or Saddleback Church or whatever it is, it's like that community thing is so powerful. If you go for a walk with your special someone around the block every day, that's probably going to give you better results than 10 CrossFit WODs a week.
That's exactly right. And if you like it, you'll do it.
Yeah. So you've written so many books, and you've just really prolific in terms of publishing. When you put out a new book like this, I know you've already hit a bestseller status. And what is your hope when you continue to publish? What continues to keep you motivated? What is your hope with this particular book?
Well, having seen what a powerful difference these changes can make, I wanted to share that and inspire people and show people it's not that hard. I think the biggest obstacle that many people have to making lifestyle changes is the belief that, it can't be that powerful. I mean, it has to be a new drug, a new laser, something really high-tech to be powerful. And I think our unique contribution over the years has been to use these very high-tech, expensive, state-of-the-art scientific measures to prove how powerful these very simple and low-tech and low-cost interventions can be. And also how simple it is to make these changes, and that it's not like one set of diet and lifestyle changes for this and another for that. It's really the same for all of them. And to me, awareness is always the first step in healing. That's why I appreciate the chance to be on your show, is to help inform and educate people that these are things that, not out of fear of dying, or fear of something bad happening, that's not really sustainable, but out of joy and pleasure and love and feeling good, and that's really what makes life worth living. And, sometimes I'll even ask people, like, why do you want to make these changes? Well, I want to live longer, like you were saying. But I'd say, well, why do you want to live longer? So let me just ask you, why do you want to live longer?
Mostly just to spend time with my kids, their kids, and hopefully my great-great-grandkids. Just to really enjoy life to the fullest, and really coming back to what we talked about, walking around the block with your special someone. The richness of life is often those really small moments, not the really big things. So rather than trying to complete 10 Ironmans or something like that, really just like family time and exploring nature and being physically fit and active, really being able to live my life, not just stay alive.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful, and that's what I often hear. People say, I want to, watch my kids grow up. I want to dance at their wedding.
Totally.
I want to, my wife's father died just a week and a half ago, and so after a long bout with pancreatic cancer, and we got to see, what really matters, when you're that close to death, are the very things that you're talking about. It's these simple things, And one of the things we write about in the book is that the goal of all of these various so-called stress management techniques, I mean, they are stress management techniques, but they're more than that. The ancient swamis and rabbis and priests and monks and nuns and so on didn't develop these techniques just to unclog their arteries or lower their blood pressure or whatever. It can do all those things. It can help you often get off of medication, under your doctor's care and so on. But they're really powerful tools for transforming our lives, to quiet down our mind and body, to experience more of an inner sense of peace and joy and well-being, and to realize that That's our natural state, is to be happy. And then we can often go out in the world and accomplish things, but not think that, if only I had more money or power or beauty or accomplishment, then I'd be happy. To realize that we have that already until we disturb it. Often, ironically, in the name of getting the things that we think are going to make us happy and healthy, we disturb what we could have already if we just stopped doing that. I studied meditation and yoga with an ecumenical teacher named Swami Satchidananda for many years, and he liked to make puns. People say, "What are you, a Hindu?" He'd say, "No, I'm an undo," which is part of the reason why we called the book Undo It, because these techniques is the idea that our body has this remarkable capacity to begin healing, and much more quickly than we had once realized, if we simply stop doing what's causing the problem.
Dean, really, really great to have you on the show. Really appreciate all of your work. For people listening who would like to pick up your book, follow you online, what are the best places for them to connect with you?
Oh, thank you. Just Ornish.com, Ornish.com. Everything on there is free, and that'll take you to our research, to our Medicare and other insurance companies who are covering our program in the United States. It lists, those sites where you can get the book. The book is called Undo It. My favorite key on the keyboard has always been the undo button, and now we have one in our lives as well. And so, again, I love doing this work. It's amazing how reversing disease can be so incredibly meaningful we even have patients who were so sick they were needing a heart transplant, and while waiting for a donor went on our program and got so much better they needed a heart transplant anymore. That's how powerful these simple changes can be.
If you have a back problem, back pain, or limited range of motion, limited mobility, and you go to a yoga teacher, it's very likely that yoga teacher will give you 3 yoga poses to fix your back. If you go to a strength and conditioning coach, like a personal trainer, they'll very likely give you 3 different lifting exercises to work on to strengthen your posterior chain. And if you go to a physiotherapist, they'll probably have you stand on a Bosu ball and do some weird balancing exercises. And the question is, for someone who's just trying to fix their back, heal their back, and have a youthful spine, who's correct? The answer is all 3. If we look at spinal health, it comes down to strength, flexibility, and balance, all 3. And when we go to specialists, they tend to see the world through their lens. To the hammer, everything is a nail, and that's just not really true. So when you're working on your own spinal health, you always need to work on strength, flexibility, and balance, ideally concurrently at the exact same time. I'm mentioning this because my 14-day backbend challenge starts very soon. This is our second round. We had a couple hundred students last time. We just had a really great experience. How it works is every day on Instagram, I do a live video. I'll talk right to you, and I'll walk you through some strength, balance, flexibility exercises every single day. It's about 15 minutes per day commitment. You can ask me any question you like, and we'll go through this together. By the end of the program, your spine will definitely be more mobile. You'll feel more braced and more supported with your posture, and hopefully you'll find an improvement in your balance as well. You can read testimonial stories from students who did the last course, and you can learn more if you go to yogabody.com or else yogateacherscollege.com and check for our backbend challenge, 14-day backbend challenge. Hope you can join us. Today's nutritional tip is in response to a listener question. Listener Jason says, Lucas, what about rapeseed oil? What about canola oil? What about organic rapeseed oil? I've heard it's high in omega-3. So canola oil is a rebranding of rapeseed oil. Rapeseed is a terribly named plant that is in the mustard family, and there's fields of it. It's really cheap. It was an industrial oil. It's horribly named. Nobody wants to put rapeseed oil on their salad or in their stir fry. So they rebranded it in the 70s to canola oil, and Monsanto genetically engineered the thing, and it's a total rebranding. And so now, for some reason, the canola oil is not popular, so they're going back to the terrible name of rapeseed oil in some countries, but essentially they're pretty similar. So the problem with it is, yes, there are omega-3s. The way it's processed is extremely processed. If you Google image search rapeseed field, you'll see it's a mustardish plant, so it's very difficult to get the oil out. So it's highly, highly processed. So even though there are omega-3s in there, they've been totally roasted and fried, and in many cases you have trans fats. In many cases, it's even partially hydrogenated to keep the thing stable. So it's just a terrible fat source. And why do they come back to it? Well, it's really cheap, it's genetically modified, it's ubiquitous, it's easy to grow all over the place, but you definitely want to stay away from it. I'm sure they'll continue to rebrand it. Again, remember all of these PUFA oils, your canola, corn, soy, sunflower, safflower, most of these come out of the industrial market. They're great lubricants for like machines and painting industry, for treating woods. And they started feeding them to people because they're so cheap. And they taste pretty good, but they're terrible for you. So even though if you buy, let's say, an organic rapeseed oil, I don't like to say that, but if you buy an organic rapeseed oil, if it's organic, it's not GMO, which is good, but still it's not a stable fat. It's not something you should be cooking with or eating. So I'd encourage you to stay away from it completely. This week's listener question comes from Adrian. Adrian says, Lucas, I just listened to your podcast about flexibility. I purchased your gravity yoga in the past, and I've listened to all your podcasts. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. The more I learn, the more confused I get. Please help me understand. Should someone be practicing both myofascial release, things like foam rolling, hurt so good massage balls, and passive long hold release stretching, gravity and yoga style, or are both essentially different techniques for the same purpose? They're not the same techniques. Let me clear that up for you. This is a great question because there's a lot of confusion, and in mainstream pop fitness land, people make the assumption that if you rub on muscles, that somehow they will get longer. And in fact, you'll find thousands of videos about this on YouTube, often called mobility training, and you'll see mobility WOD, and you'll see people rolling around on foam rollers, and you'll see people rolling around on massage balls and claiming that they're getting more flexible. Even some people getting massage and claiming that they're getting more flexible. This does not work. It does not work. They're two very different practices. So let's address foam rolling and massage ball and massage in general first. It's awesome. It's incredibly healing and great for you. It is a very different practice than flexibility training. Here's what happens. Let's imagine you're out for a run and you get a leg cramp in your calf, a very bad leg cramp. What do? You stop, you sit down, and you grab your fingers and you clench that calf muscle as strongly as you can. Why do you do that? Because when you clench the muscle, the pain goes away, and that cramp also goes away. This is a phenomenon called autogenic inhibition. Autogenic inhibition. When you push on an overly electrified muscle, overactive electrical activity, when you push on it and release, it reduces the electrical activity. It's just a phenomenon that happens in the body with our nervous system. We all know this intuitively. How do we hack this? Well, we tell the massage therapist to dig their elbows into our shoulders. We have them, stick the palms of their hands deep into our glutes, and they push and they release, and we go, right? That's a release of tension. It's a release of electrical activity. It's incredibly valuable. Let me give you another analogy just so you really contextualize this. Autogenic inhibition, push and release. Let's just say you're working at your computer and someone comes up behind you, hopefully someone you know, maybe a relative or a loved one, and and you say, can you just push on my shoulders for a minute? And they push on your shoulders and you just go, I really needed that. And you'll often hear the person say, you have a knot. You have a knot in your back, right? What does a knot mean? A knot is an overactive muscle that's viscerally, when you touch it, it's harder than the rest of the muscles. It's overactive. It's all clenched up. What do we do to release that? We push and we release. We push and release. So this is what foam rolling does. This is what Hurt So Good massage balls, these massage balls that we have, this is what it does. It's incredibly, incredibly powerful for releasing tension, for releasing trigger points, for prepping your body for deep stretching. It does not all by itself make you more flexible. It's a really good preparatory practice for deep stretching. Let's say you're going to do some hamstring stretches, some ragdoll poses, some 5-minute holds, something like that. Really great idea to foam roll or to use Hurt So Good massage balls to first turn off that electrical activity. But you have to do deep stretching. In our classes in Barcelona, when we teach gravity yoga, we actually combine autogenic inhibition with our massage balls with gravity yoga, long hold passive poses. So they certainly go hand in hand, but the mechanisms that they're operating on are completely different, and you cannot get flexible foam rolling despite all the goofballs at the gym who are rolling their IT band for like an hour thinking that they're going to wake up the next day with loose hips. They will wake up sore, and they'll certainly have loosey-goosey legs, but you can't get it. It's just like you can't hire somebody to do your push-ups for you. You can't hire somebody to do your stretching for you. Rolling around is not the same. Deep tissue massage is not the same. Even Thai massage is not going to make you more flexible. It will release tension. It's great for you. It's very, very healing. You have to do your own stretches. For those of you who aren't familiar, gravity yoga, long hold passive poses, time under passive tension is what we're looking for. So just imagine you flop forward in a forward bend, put on a timer for 5 minutes, hang out there. It's slightly more complex, but not too much more complex. This is one of the fastest way to increase your flexibility when we're doing flexibility training specifically. Hope that's helpful, Adrian.
This week's iTunes review is by Runner Bamboo from the USA. Runner Bamboo says, "For all who have a passion for health and fitness, here you find great insight and guidance. Thank you, Lucas." Runner Bamboo, you have won the Yoga Trapeze. Email us at podcast@yogabody.com and we will get that to you.
Breathing is one of the fastest and most powerful ways you can affect your nervous system, the pH of your blood, even your endocrine system. It's really dramatic how quickly you can impact your body, but most people don't understand it. If you go to yoga classes, the teacher just says, breathe deeply, breathe slowly. And we don't really understand what that means. I got really frustrated with this, so I put together a guide for you, my podcast listeners. Go to yogabody.com/how to breathe. Yogabody.com/how to breathe. You put in your email, and I'll give you this PDF. It shows you exactly how to do water, whiskey, and coffee breathing. These 3 specific practices, which all breathing falls into one of these 3 categories. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Yogabody.com/how to breathe.